Hello everyone. We are Shute Home Economics and Commercial High School and南山 High School. Today, we are going to talk about the importance of getting everyone's opinions and visions.
I grew up in the United States. In the United States, people with disabilities were considered normal in any environment, including schools. Because of this, I thought of disabilities more as a personality rather than a disorder. That's why when I moved to Japan, I was shocked and confused to see that disabled people were completely separated at school or in public. That is why I thought this was caused because of the difference of consciousness between the United States and Japan, and thought disabled people in Japan were mistreated and misunderstood.
Like this, most Japanese people tend to avoid those who are different from them, such as people with disabilities. When we don't feel that this way of thinking is inclusive, what should we do to change this mindset? We can find hints from our experiences.
Most of the Nansan members are returnees. A returnee is a person who came back to their own country after living in a foreign country.
When we were living in other countries, we were often asked by our classmates, "Hey, say something in Japanese." And when we did as they said, they showed great interest. They listened to us very carefully and even asked us how to write in Japanese. Since they had interest for the language, it became an opportunity for us to understand each other more, and we felt that we were welcome to the place.
When we came back to Japan, we're in the same situation. Our classmates asked us to speak English, but even if we did so, they didn't show much interest. They just said words like "wow" or "cool," and they took no further reaction. Made us feel like we were eliminated from the group, and that was
Also, several World Youth Meeting presentation, we felt as though we were different.
In WIF, most of the participants made a presentation, collaborating with students from different countries. We, Nansan students and Suda students, are from Japan and Taiwan. Even if we live in the same country, we all have different ideas. So, it was even more difficult for us to combine our ideas.
Throughout making these presentations, we also found difficulties in connecting our thoughts. We sometimes wondered why we couldn't get ourselves understood. But at these times, we were able to make a better understanding by coming back and thinking about the differences between our ideas. If we hadn't accepted their ideas, we couldn't have completed this presentation.
What do you feel by listening to our two examples of an experience as a returning and making this presentation? What do you think we can do? Now, we would like to show you our conclusion.
From our experience, we feel that having interest towards other people is the most important factor.
Norman is exactly the same. We are all different. For example, I like math, but he does not.
Like Alex, we definitely have some differences, but we think the most important thing is to be interested in those differences. Interest and curiosity towards other people encourage us to know more about that person.
For example, Andy likes playing basketball, but Yuo doesn't. So Yuo thought Andy was different from him, but that's the wrong idea. Even if Yuo doesn't like basketball, he could react like this. I don't like basketball, but what do you like about basketball instead?
Like the experience as a returnee, there are distinct differences in opinions when one shows interest in the subject and other doesn't. When we are in foreign countries, since our classmates had interest towards the differences, we were able to know and understand each other more.
And from the experience of WIM, at first, we all had difficulty explaining our own ideas to other members. But our ideas differ. We shouldn't block each other's ideas out of our minds, nor reject them, even if we have completely different ideas.
Instead, we should have our interest toward the differences in those ideas to realize more about each other's opinions. This way of thinking helps us combine our ideas by making this presentation, and finally led us to complete it.
In other words, labeling someone's differences in a negative way, such as uncommon or abnormal, and keeping a distance, won't help us understand each other.
The important thing is to acknowledge people's differences in a positive way, such as unique, and have interest towards them.
Now, we have a simple question for you. This is quite sudden, but please close your eyes and try to imagine a picture of Mount Fuji.
Now, open your eyes. Did you imagine a picture like this?
Yes.
No, it's not on at all. We think that in general, when people are told to imagine a picture of Mount Fuji, many will imagine the front of the mountain, like in this picture. But blind people imagine the mountain in 3D, like this.
Don't you think that this difference is interesting? That is exactly right. It's having interest toward other people's different views. The act that you just did now is the first step to understanding other people better.
So when you happen to meet someone who you think is different from you, don't just think this person is different from me and walk away. Think differently. Have interest towards their differences and step into their mind. You might see another vision.
What we can learn from this is that diversity and inclusion are very important factors in looking at any situation or decision. Our two schools are all grateful to have been able to learn this in the process of making this presentation. Thank you for listening.
Do you have any questions or comments for us?
From Canada.
So I've been teaching English in Japan for the past 25 years. And one of the biggest problems I've had teaching English was that a lot of my students quite honestly say they're not interested in learning English or another language. As students who have lived abroad, and many of you are very good at English, what advice would you give me to be a better teacher, to get my students more interested in English?
Yeah, it's a hard question.
I would recommend your students to watch movies. Movie series, like Hollywood movies, are really popular here in Japan too. So I feel like if you show your students, like, for example, Despicable Me, like the Minions movie. It's easy to understand English, plus the characters are funny, so they might have interest towards English.
Okay, I do that. And any other ideas? Music, movies. What else do you think would appeal to students?
I think the best thing is to take them abroad.
Okay. Okay, sure. Yes. I actually do. Actually, we do that here. I take my students to Malaysia for 2 weeks. And to be honest, it works really well. When the students come back, they realize their weaknesses with the language, and many of them, not 100% no, but some of them become more interested in learning a language because they've made a friend overseas, they want to communicate. So yeah, that is probably one of the best ones. Now, if only I could get more money. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions?
There's lots of time. Comments also.
Yeah, thank you. So I'd like to know the one thing. When you complete the presentation, is there any conflict between the team with Taiwanese, between Japanese and Taiwanese team? If so, any conflict or misunderstanding?
Is it after we completed or during the
during the making the presentation?
There is a lot.
So what's the most important thing to solve such a complete focusing on the final solution?
Like, we think that face-to-face communication is needed to understand us more. Because before they came to Japan, we were only doing it on Skype or like online. Then like we can't do gestures or anything, or like looking at us, eye contact. That's all we like. Eye contact is quite important to like let the other person know what you want to say. So we need face-to-face communication to understand us more.
How do you think of the result of the completed presentation? Is it perfect? How do you evaluate the final presentation you completed?
Well, truthfully speaking, we didn't have much time after they came to Japan. So I think it's not like 100% perfect, but I think that we did our best on it.
Okay, very good. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to tell us?
High school students or university students? Yeah, please
Yes.
ask to my students.
Could I have your phone number? Anything is okay.
What is the biggest problem you encountered during the preparation for WYM?
Like we sent our conclusion on email, but like we had misunderstanding between the conclusion. I think that was the biggest problem while making like the slides and the script, because we were thinking about a different conclusion. Thank you.
Okay, another question from my team. Yes, Japanese girl. Go ahead. Yes.
What is the difference between Japan and America?
Difference?
No Trump.
No Trump. We don't have Trump.
Good thing.
Yeah, good things. Yeah.
U.S. what I enjoyed in the U.S. the most was the diversity in between, in schools and just anywhere. There was a lot of cultures, religions, anything, different skin colors, many people, and I got to be friends with them and understand their culture more. And yeah. So I recommend you guys to maybe maybe for a year, even a month is okay. It's really fun, and you'll get to know about more people, different countries, cultures, everything. And you can also improve on your English too, which is fun.
Thank you. Actually, they will visit Australia.
Oh.
The next January.
Okay, guys. Now time's up. Thank you, students of Nansan, for